I guess the first thing that jumps out is 85 points, over 1,000 total yards in 2 games thus far. Can you just talk about what you've seen from your offense, your versatility, and the excitement that you have about watching this amount of production?
Yeah, I think it is production oriented, but it's the diversity is really what is the most impressive. Brennan, I think threw for 400-ish today, but the size of the chunks that are happening are increasing, and the number of targets. So when you see Jelani downfield, when you see Rashawn Henry downfield, when you see Dontavian Wicks downfield, it just starts to, and then Billy, right, always in there. It's hard to narrow down on 4 different or 5 different threats. And with a quarterback that's making good decisions and fast decisions and throwing accurately, then that's leading to points. And what we saw today is it certainly could have been more, and with some field goal attempts and I think 1 turnover, maybe 2 turnovers, but just lots and lots of positive things happening.
Yeah, Coach, as a follow-up on Brennan's performance, 405 yards, 27 of 36, and 5 touchdowns. First time since 2016, a 5-touchdown performance by a quarterback. But more importantly, for the values of this program, a lot of that production was after what looked like a knee injury. Can you, if you have any update, but also can you talk about his toughness?
Yeah, he's unmatched in terms of how competitive, how tough, and his determination. And yeah, so he had an injury of some sort and didn't look like it affected him much. But it's a great check for our program as to now what will the offense look like without him, what's the next tier. And luckily the first 2 games we've had a chance to explore and see and test other players, right? And man, when you want to play 12 and 13 and 14 games, man, you're going to need to see other players, and the sooner the better. So that's been really helpful.
Final 2 things for you, Coach. Defensively, Illinois came in with a proclivity for running the football. Can you talk about your run fits and assignments and how pleased you were with containing them to 14 points?
Yeah, really, really impressed. We played consistent for the majority of the game. There was very few breakdowns and very few things that didn't fit exactly right. When we didn't, right, Illinois exploited those on both drives they had scored, but 14 points in 2 games is a really nice start to a season defensively. And again, the number of players making plays is this so far is a football team with a lot of contributors, and I really like that in terms of just our identity.
Final thing here, Coach. Next week, a big opportunity as you travel to North Carolina. Even just this game, but these first 2 weeks, how do you build on them and turn your focus to next week?
Just that. It is the next game, which means it's the most important game, and all the progress and improvements from week 1 to week 2 now happen from week 2 to week 3, and it just cycles again. Awesome that we're in ACC play, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Coach.
Yep.
Bronco, in all your years on the defensive side of the ball, did you have to scheme against many tight ends with the size and speed that Jelani has, and just what challenges does he present from that standpoint?
Well, the first challenge is who do you match up with him, and so if you choose to put a linebacker on him, most likely he's not as fast, and there aren't many linebackers that are over 6'7". And then if you choose the secondary route, there's not many secondary players that are 6'7", and they might be fast, but they probably don't weigh 250. And so really there's a matchup issue no matter what direction you go. And so as he continues to master the position, as he continues to keep up with our pace and the conditioning and what it takes to go beginning to end in a game, then the production starts to climb, which from week 1 to week 2, quite frankly, the shock and awe of the pace and what that felt like to him, and then the adjustment and the recalibration was just kind of week 1 to week 2. But he's just starting, and there really isn't a good matchup if you're thinking about a man-to-man anyway.
Bronco, different things happen when you talk about we want to fix something from week 1 to week 2. It doesn't always happen as clearly. Brennan talked a lot about the slow start offensively. obviously polar opposite. How pleased were you, and what was behind the big start today?
Most of the time, I have a belief that we're designed for the results we get, right? And our practices were sequential and methodical in building to kind of a crescendo toward the end, and that's exactly how we played in game one. And so we just flipped the script, and so we did some design elements within practice that didn't allow anything really other than warm up, and you didn't really know what was coming. And so our emphasis schematically, but also our emphasis in terms of the training, whether either one of those was the reason, I'd love to claim that. We'll see over time, but we did emphasize it.
Go over here and then to Ben.
Bronco, you have, as you talked about the diversity of the offense, you have so many guys catching passes downfield, and then you also have multiple guys taking snaps, multiple guys throwing passes. You have Brendan catching passes. Can you elaborate on the origin of this offense and how you, as a staff, maybe piece together a way to get all those guys the ball?
It's really happened. It goes back to when we had Taysom Hill at BYU, and that start of it was most quarterbacks, right? At that time, other than a true option quarterback, it was more traditional and drop back and pro style, and then here comes a dual threat kind of, and the University of Oregon, right, in the tempo. And with Taysom, man, he was a great runner, probably the best athlete on our team running the ball. He was the best thrower. He's probably the best receiver or tight end or running back. And so this thought of, what if there was someone else that could throw it to him? Why does he have to play quarterback every play? Or if we have someone else that's anywhere similar, why do they have to just watch until we need another quarterback? And coming to Virginia, and it has been evolving over time, we were just looking at what resources do we have, who can we bring to UVA, and most of the time the best high school football players are playing quarterback. And most of the time on Little League teams, they're the pitcher and the shortstop and the quarterback. And so as many of those guys as we can get, while we're training and developing them to be quarterbacks, they just seem to really have a great feel for the game and other things. And they've probably thrown and caught more balls than any other position from youth sports all the way on. And so we're just letting them play football.
Bronco, when you take the early lead, I mean, how much does it set the tone when you've got 14 points in the first 5 minutes?
Man, a lot. And our team responded because it was such a focus, and so when the team heard it over and over again and then saw it, there's an immediate confidence boost. But there was another challenge, that was 11 o'clock start. And that was a challenge. And so to marry those together and know a fast start might compensate for the time and make it harder for someone to then catch up, especially a team that wants to run it more than throw it. Luckily, that was executed and we pulled it off. But all that kind of contributed to the emphasis.
Caroline and Brad.
Bronco, there were some changes to the depth chart. Saw Anthony Johnson get out there a little bit more. What did you think of his play, and what does it say about his fit in the program when you see how the teammates responded to his late interception?
Yeah, he is a dynamic personality, to say the least, and just vibrant and alive and smiling and loud, and you hear him before you see him every morning. And he just loves football, and he prepares wildly. And as a transfer for another team in our league, he just is so grateful, and he just celebrates every day. And it's contagious, so our team likes him. And for that response and the short amount of time he's been here, we really are intentional about who we select as our grad transfers. And man, when they play and they start and they contribute and they're liked, it's a great fit, and he's having a good experience.
Coach, with Adib not available today, one, what was his situation, and two, what did you think of your defensive front without him in the mix?
Yeah, he suffered an injury in practice, and so that gave both Nusi and Ben Smiley a chance to play more, and yeah, I think they held up really well. The run game, when it was effective for Illinois, it wasn't because of the defensive front, right? It might have been a fit by a secondary player or a linebacker. But I think 2 weeks in a row, they've done a really nice job.
Bronco, I know I asked you about this last week, but I'm going to try again.
Didn't like my answer?
I didn't love your answer. In terms
wait.
of the way your offense challenges a defense in their preparation during the week, how much of a consideration is that for you to just put a lot of different things on film, not so much to stress them on game day, but to stress them Monday through Thursday when they're preparing?
Yeah, it's we all have the same amount of time, and it's a race. And if you can't name something, it's harder to have the resources to prepare for it, and every minute counts. And so the longer it takes to decipher it, and if it's ever changing, then it might still not be enough time. And that emphasis or the influence from my defensive background is I'm not going to say is the determining and the deciding vote of why we do that, but it's influencing it, and anything that I think is difficult, we do, and add to it. And that, again, with limited time, and then a team traveling, and then an early start, you just run out of time. And so that's part of the reason. So you can ask me again next week, and we'll just keep it going.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
We'll check that on next week. Frank, I'm sorry, Jerry, then Frank.
Keaton, on his touchdown run, bounced off one guy, changed directions, and ran over a guy at the goal line. Does his athleticism and his abilities continue to amaze you?
You know, it's not even, I'm not going to underscore or undermine his athleticism. He just is a good player, and he runs the ball really well, and in an elusive kind of interesting way, and so you could call him a running back, but man, then he catches the passes really well, and then he can throw it, right? And then he's doing all the special teams, and so it just seems like there might not be a player on our team that is more vital right now than him because of the diversity in what he can do, and he's just, yeah, he adds a lot of value.
Coach, I was wondering about the linebacking core. It seemed today that all of them contributed, led by Noah Taylor, but just your thoughts on linebackers.
Kelly Papinga is doing a really nice job coaching him. So Nick Jackson in week one was just really, really productive. Noah Taylor as well, and they're both different types of players. What's starting to emerge, though, is the third linebacker spot in terms of kind of the production or naming it. You're starting to see Hunter Stewart emerge, and then Elliott Brown, right? And so we already knew those two, but now here comes Elliott, and here comes Hunter. And then, wow, there's a great crop of first years, and they're on special teams now, and it won't take long before they're going to be getting reps as well, and our secondary. So really good young depth, and so we're excited about the athleticism, even behind the ones that you and I just mentioned.
We'll take our last two questions from Jeff and Doug.
Bronco, some weeks it's pretty easy to predict who you're going to choose to break the rock. Looks like you had a lot of good options today. I know you went with Jelani, but how strongly did you consider Dontavian, and what can you say about his performance?
Yeah, Dontavian was the top contender because of the 2 touchdowns and just who he's becoming right from week 1 to week 2. He's a very good receiver, and man, with Lavelle's loss, did we need that? And so he's doing a really nice job. So it ultimately boiled down to those two, and yeah, number 0, I just went intuitively. It just seems like that influence was a little bit bigger, but arguably either way, right? I had 2 great choices at least.
What does beating a Big Ten team mean in recruiting or otherwise?
Yeah, if we go back to, it might have been 0 week, probably the focus in college football was Illinois beating Nebraska. If we just go back, and this was that team.